All right, parents, in this video, we're going to be talking about childhood and teen anxiety. And we may as well just stretch that out to young adult and just anxiety in general. Unfortunately, the reality of today's world is that we don't just see anxiety in high schoolers and young adults anymore. Today, we take on kids as young as 5, 6, 7 who are already struggling and riddled with anxiety. They can't go to school, they can't get through a regular day with all the transitions of it without their sensory system, without their sympathetic fight or flight system, without their anxiety being triggered and stuck on and spilling over and greatly interfering with their quality of life. We truthfully have an anxiety epidemic, and it started long before the last couple of years. And depending on which stat or research you're reading, whether that be the CDC's or others, we know for sure that at least 10% of kids, or 1 in 10, are struggling with anxiety. And a lot of other research is showing that it's greater than 20%. Some say at least 25 to 26%, which means right now 1 in 4 kids, at least in the last 12 months, have had a significant bout of anxiety. So now let's get out of the negative part of the anxiety conversation and let's get to the hope, answers, and help. And what I mean by that is that in order to help your child get to the other side of their anxiety struggles, we first have to understand what the root cause really is. And that's what we want to share with you in this video today. So please watch this one all the way through. Please share this with another family who you know's child is struggling with anxiety, because we are seeing far too many kids and far too early struggle with anxiety. So let's break it down. First, what are the symptoms? What is anxiety? Well, anxiety is a lot like ADHD, sensory processing disorder, and other neurodevelopmental challenges we specialize in at our practice, in that it can be really hard to decipher, is this a normal amount of anxiety at this degree in this situation, or is it not? Now, normal situations where your child or teen may have anxiety are things like a big sports game, a big test, meeting new friends, going to summer camp. Some of those things or situations in their life that are new or unknown. Our nervous system has a sympathetic fight or flight response where it says, hey, we're going into something big or new. Let's heighten that arousal state. Let's tune that brain up for a little bit more fight or flight. When the sympathetic fight or flight nervous system is tuned up in those situations, that's not a bad thing. But that's not the kind of anxiety that we're talking about. We're talking about where the symptoms aren't just for finals week or for a big volleyball match. They're all the time. When it shows up every day with regular daily routine activities, that's when it becomes a challenge. And that's a sign that your child's nervous system is way too overstressed, way too overwhelmed, and that they're actually stuck in a neurophysiological state of anxiety. Now, what we know about anxiety and other neurological conditions in kids is that the root cause of it is an imbalance in the central autonomic nervous system. And it's called the autonomic nervous system because it runs on autopilot. It's automatic, and that's where emotional regulation happens. So there isn't an on-off button or switch like there is for our muscles where we can move them voluntarily or consciously. When it comes to our emotions, they're really deeply woven in with that autonomic nervous system. Meaning, if the nervous system is out of balance, particularly if it's shifted into the sympathetic fight or flight state that is stuck on overdrive all the time, not just when it's needed, then that is actually going to alter the neurological function of things like the brain, amygdala, prefrontal cortex. And when the function of the nervous system is out of balance and dysregulated, it's gonna kick out things like anxiety and emotional dysregulation. So the root cause of anxiety is actually a nerdy neurological term called dysautonomia. And what dysautonomia is that it is a sympathetic fight or flight overdrive response. It's too much of a sympathetic response, which at the same time means there's not enough of that parasympathetic rest and digest response. You may be thinking, what triggers dysautonomia? Is it genetic? Is it environmental? Is it both? Like with any neurological condition, genetic predisposition could be a factor. But what scientific and clinical research has shown us is that our nervous system, including our genetics, are very adaptable. So if we grow up in a highly anxious environment or highly stressful or toxic environment, then our nervous system is going to adapt to that stress, going to adapt to that anxiety, and be more hardwired in that direction. So what we see in 90% of cases of young adults or teens with anxiety is that it goes all the way back to the beginning. The neurological cause of their anxiety can be tied back to what we call the perfect storm. And the perfect storm has 3 factors. Number 1 is high stress and anxiety during the fertility or pregnancy journey, where baby's nervous system was tapped into mom's nervous system. So if mom was highly stressed, highly anxious during that critical development window for baby's nervous system, then it's going to shift more towards that sympathetic gas pedal fight or flight side. The second biggest trigger within the perfect storm is birth intervention and trauma. And we see a significantly high clinical correlation with this. And there's research coming out every single year that's backing this up. There's a high clinical correlation between birth interventions like emergency C-section, regular C-section, forceps, vacuum, and we're seeing a very high correlation with induction and anxiety later on in life. And the third element is maybe something you've already tried to address with your natural health endeavors, and that is toxins. So it's the diet, things like sugar, gluten, grains, chemicals in our foods and in our environment. There's also a fourth one, and that is technology. So when it comes to anxiety in teens, many people want to blame cell phones. But the truth is that there are way bigger triggers that happened way earlier and caused way more neurological stress, even if a kid got a phone pretty early. So those 3-4 perfect storm ingredients are really the big contributing factors to anxiety. And what I want to show you now is a test that we run in our office called an HRV test, and that stands for heart rate variability. Now the V, the variability, really is key and is everything. And that's because when our children have those busy weeks where their nervous system does get shifted over into that sympathetic fight or flight response, we want to make sure that there's an appropriate activation of the vagus nerve or parasympathetic side of their nervous system to balance it all out. And that's really what HRV is measuring. It's measuring the function or the lack thereof of the vagus nerve and parasympathetic activation. So this child's nervous system, this teen's nervous system is completely shifted over here to the left. So that's the same thing as saying it's sympathetic dominant, or that the vagus nerve parasympathetic side of the nervous system isn't doing its job and it's not balancing out this stress. So a brain stuck on sympathetic dominance is going to be kicking out big emotions. It's going to be kicking out anxiety. And when there's too much of one thing, there isn't enough of the other thing, and that's exactly what's happening here. And this little white dot is where she's plotting based upon the variability of her heart rate and her galvanic skin response, which is another measurement of variability in neurological function. And when you go low on this axis here on the left, that's fatigue, that's exhaustion. And so what we see again and again is that when kiddos go through those perfect storm triggers very early on, their body adapts and grows into this anxiety and grows into this sympathetic dominant system that we're seeing here on this HRV. So we've got to get them out of this sympathetic fight or flight dominance, and at Sprout Family Chiropractic, that is exactly what we do through neural tonal adjustments that activate the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic side of the nervous system. So we know how to turn on the rest, regulation, relaxed side of the nervous system, and in order to get the sympathetic and anxiety side of the nervous system down, we have to get the vagus nerve or parasympathetic side of the nervous system up, because they're inversely proportional to one another. So we wanted to make this video because we're seeing a lot more anxiety at a lot younger age, and it just breaks our hearts to see kiddos stuck in this vicious neurological cycle of anxiety. So we hope this video helped make sense of anxiety, what the root cause is, and how to address it and help it without covering it up with medications and having to deal with the side effects. If you need more information, click on the link in the bio or in the caption, and it'll lead you to the full article on anxiety, where you can learn all about the vagus nerve, dysautonomia, and the technology that I showed here on the iPad. And when you're ready, if this is the right approach for you, feel free to reach out, send us a message, give us a call, and we'll get you scheduled for a consultation consultation so we can really help your child or you overcome this anxiety. You got to get to the root cause first, and that is the nervous system. And that is what pediatric chiropractic is all about, and what we do so differently than anyone else in chiropractic and all of healthcare. Please like this video, leave us a comment, share it with someone you know that could benefit from it, and thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.